This episode is sponsored by the Northern California Education Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit organization awarding scholarships to CNU students since 2009. Thank you for investing in the future of healthcare.
We're at an important stage in history today, particularly in terms of the new space age.
We have private companies that are now willing to invest something close to like a space hotel.
How they want to integrate the medical safety of people that are actually going to be on those stations, whether they're for tourism or for research. There are no ambulances charging up to space, right? Medical safety comes first.
What does a Space 101 for us docs look like? Welcome, one and all. Today we'll be focusing on a unique topic, breaking down the walls of communication between space law specialists and the medical field, with an end goal of bringing a new set of unique jobs to the economy of the future. So I definitely encourage you to stick around if this is something that catches your eye. I'd like to give a warm welcome to Dr. Saadia Pekkanen. She's had quite the scholarly adventure, graduating with her master's from both Yale Law School and Columbia University, while attaining her PhD at Harvard for political science. She is currently a professor at the University of Washington and has a whole slew of publications, some of which we may dive into today. She's also a member of the Council of Foreign Relations with a special interest in Japan, the Greater Asia, and the UK, as well as a member of the International Institute of Space Law, which brings us to our main topic of discussion today, space law and medicine. So again, welcome in Dr. Pekkanen. Congrats on finishing another year at Washington.
Thank you.
Let's just jump right into it then. So what got you into space law?
I think that's a wonderful question. I've always been sort of interested in space and sort of having grown up around the world and as the daughter of a diplomat, was very interested in the ways that countries come together to collaborate on important issues in principled ways, in legal ways. And space was one of those ways that I thought would be of interest. And, when I got to graduate school, my advisor said, well, I don't know about space. You have to come down to Earth. And so I started to take a look at countries where there were space programs. And she happened to be a Japan specialist. And then I sort of got into doing Japan and learned a great deal about their space program, got into looking at Asia. And Asia, just so you know, is one of the pivotal regions for rising space powers. So it's extremely, extremely important as a region. So I'm glad she helped me focus on that. And then international space law has really been around since the late 1960s formally. And then we have a whole body of knowledge that we can bring to bear when we're thinking about international and policy problems. And we're at an important stage in history today, particularly in terms of the new space age. So this is a good time for us to begin and build bridges with other disciplines with international space law and space policy in general.
I mean, that's a lot to digest all at once, but definitely we're starting to see a shift towards space. Even now, us medical students don't really see too much. But from the research that I was doing on you, I'm starting to realize that there's a lot going on up there that we're not all that familiar with. So you mentioned that you were, at a young age, you were interested in the diplomacy that was going on between different nations.
Yes.
Was there, you said this space talk really kind of started in the late 60s, 1960s?
Yes.
Could you elaborate a little bit more about that? Is it because of the space race that was going on?
Yes, that's exactly right. So what is one of the most, I think for many people, the old space race, the space race between the United States and the Soviet Union sort of colors their understanding of where we are in the space race today. But the first thing that I would say to your audience is that we are not in that world anymore. There are more than 77 nations that are interested in space. More than 100 plus countries have signed up to international space law treaties. And so that colors the ways that countries can actually interact with each other. So we're not talking about two countries. We're talking, close to. So that makes it very interesting. But another very significant change is that, even though the U.S. and the USSR, the then Soviet Union, were arch enemies during the Cold War, what is very interesting about space is that they did come together to lay the foundations for something called the Outerspace Treaty in 1967. And that treaty is really the treaty which colors whose principles sort of color almost every which way that we think about collaborations or cooperation or diplomatic interactions between countries. And it has the most number of signatories across the world. And that is a treaty that I think is also extremely important when we begin to think about how to build bridges with space medicine and the aerospace field.
Okay. All right. I see. So back in 1967, that's when we had our first really official national treaty. And then from there, things have been building up. So it's never always been, what was it, Russia versus the US. It
Yes.
started to make its way towards more of a formal kind of community-based international collaboration. That's pretty cool. That's not something you hear of very often.
No, and I think it also changes our understanding of the fact that even though these two countries were so opposed to each other in an ideological way, military ways, economic ways, they still came together to write this foundational treaty in 1967. And as countries sign up to this treaty, it is the building block for international space law. Period. It's pretty amazing, I think.
Amazing.
You know,
It's
it is
really, really
amazing.
cool.
Yeah. I think that's extraordinary.
So now flashing forward to now, right?
Yes.
You mentioned you were doing some research over the summer. Does this pertain at all to what the whole like space law and medicine is kind of angled towards? Like, what's the goal of the work now?
I'm so grateful to California North State University for starting and initiating this conversation, because like most space law and space policy people, we don't intersect very much with the space medicine, the space aerospace medicine, or the medical or space policy people. So one of the things that I want to try and do this summer, and this is really the first step that I've taken in that direction, is to think about how to break down silos between these research communities that exist, right? So we have the lawyers in one camp, we have the policy analysts in one camp, we have medical people and health people in one camp. Have to try to bring them together. So having a conversation and initiating an understanding of why these are important not just in a national, but in an international context for future space physicians and medical people and health policy people is extremely important. I would also say that this is because I think at a foundational level, we can all agree that we want space exploration to continue. We want human space exploration to continue. We need to be able to bring together those pieces in a collaborative way that is sustainable over the long run. Otherwise, as many of our space billionaires like to go around saying, we'd like to have millions of people living and working in space.
Right.
Well, the foundations for that start now, and we need to sort of bring those communities together. In terms of how they think, and also what are the building blocks that we can put in place, so that we indeed do get to a place where millions of people might in fact be living and working in space. And so medicine is an extremely important part of that. And that's the conversation that I'm hoping we can lead forward together.
And I think you have an amazing point, not to toot my own horn, but like medicine is extremely important. It's what we're going to be spending, at least for us medical students, the next 10 years of our lives studying. And then after the fact, spending the next 50 years of our lives practicing and then studying even more. So to be able to apply our concept to a more outer worldly idea would be honestly amazing. So just to kind of get to the basics of what we have now, what are professionals, whether it be space law or doctor's position, whatever, what are they doing now? What's the start?
So the start legally is the Outerspace Treaty. And the Outerspace Treaty is very clear. It says, we need to be, the principle is that anything that constitutes a danger to the life or health of astronauts, we need to pay attention to. And so what national authorities do, say the United States or abroad, is that national authorities like NASA, for example, have something called the Office of Health and Medical Affairs, and that office is responsible for monitoring astronauts while they're on Earth, while they're on the space station, and when they come back from the space station. And so the space station, since 2000, has almost 6 people at a time. But what we have gathered during that time is a lot of data, the physiology, psychological, behavioral. So we do have that data. And the issue is there is a body of knowledge that we know about how it affects the human body. So cells age, your blood fluids in space go to your head, you have clots. All those things, of course, constitute a danger to the life or health of astronauts. So very important to study that. And so we have that data that are available, and I think will inform the way that we think about private space stations going into orbit, hopefully after the International Space Station, and then also beyond that to thinking about how we think about medical issues on the moon, supposing we have a base there, or we are going to Mars, and how do we have, what are the things that will be involved? So this ISS lab, sort of like we really should think of it as a lab, has given us a lot of very important data about how we, about the impact on human bodies and what can we do to sort of help them along in a very, very extreme and dangerous environment for human beings. Right. So medicine is, first thing on the agenda. The safety of astronauts is first thing on the agenda. And as I said, until CNU sort of made me take a look at this from our legal and policy perspectives, and as I learned a little bit more about the medical and aerospace medicine field, I feel like this is the frontier in a significant way. If you're going to affect millions of people living in space, this is where we start. And so you started. Thank you for that.
I just think, hey, we're trying our best, right? The thing that sounds so jaw-dropping to me is the idea of having millions of people in space at a time.
Yes.
And for something like that to happen, we obviously, so what's nice is that I feel like we can easily take that data that you've pulled for months and months of having those people up in the ISS and assess what medications we can give them, what workout routines we can provide for them, and kind of work our way forward based on that data. So thank God we have that data, and we can start off with that data and kind of like run forward with it.
Exactly.
My big question is kind of to start is like, how do we get 1 million people up in space? Are there going to be like, is there another ISS, or like what does that look like?
That's it. You ask another excellent question. And I think this is where I think it's very important that people in the space medicine field understand the national and international context in which this new space age is proceeding, right? So one of the most important things about this, as I already said, is first, there's not just two countries. There's a number of very important countries that are players, and then all of the developing spacefaring countries are also very interested in leveraging that. Second thing that is very important is that we have unprecedented technologies. Now, at the time of the Outer Space Treaty in 1967, what are we really talking about? We're talking about satellites, and we're talking about rockets going up. We're not that world either anymore. We're in an era where rockets can go up and down, where we have tens of thousands of satellites in orbit, and where the dream then of private space stations is also coming to the fore. So we already have companies that are looking to build private space stations because the life of the ISS, like any physical machinery, like any physical machine, will come to it will eventually come down in 2030. So for the United States, it's extremely important to sort of not have a gap and to have private space stations perhaps be there as well. And as that is happening, we also have very worthy players, China, India, all these other players also interested in sort of human space flight. And China already has a space station, a functioning space station. It also has an agreement with Russia to put a lunar research station on the moon. So you can see that in bits and pieces, we are beginning to see the projection of human beings in Earth orbit, and then beyond that on celestial bodies like the moon, and then onto Mars as well. So to all of that, I think foundational is the medical and biological system that will be able to sustain human life. Because on the space station, there's only 6 people ever on the space station at one time. The whole body of astronauts that has gone to space is about 700 or so. And the United States astronaut corps that has been on the International Space Station is about 360 plus astronauts. So from your medical perspective, you can understand these are not really big, statistically significant clinical trials kind of, So what we are doing is a lot of data analysis, but that also has to be sort of nested with these realities. And so sometimes the rhetoric about millions of people being that's a wonderful and worthy goal. It certainly inspires people. But to go in that direction, I think we need to solve the medical and the biological basis for sustaining human beings in space. So we build on what we have learned, but there's a lot more learning left to be done. And very importantly, of course, I would like to see the United States lead. I'd like to see what the national conversation looks like. But we have to be cognizant that it's also taking place in an international environment where we have worthy competitors who are also engaged in the same thing. Now, having said that, I think that all those competitors, all those actors can foundationally agree that, Jake, to go back to your question about having millions of people sort of living in space, for them to come together, I think that at a minimum, they can agree that we need to safeguard human health. I mean, that's just a given. So how do we do that based on the knowledge that we have acquired? But how also do we train the young physicians and doctors and healthcare professionals like yourself to be ready for that work? So I think we're at the beginning stages of trying to do that. And that's the conversation that I would like to be a part of and to help bring the space law and policy side to intersect with the space medicine and healthcare policy side.
I see. So we already do have like a plan kind of set up in a way, but I just want to make sure I get this right. We could have millions of people come up to space. It's not going to happen yet. We still need more data. Although we do have some behavioral and physiological data, it's not enough to warrant a specific effect. So that's maybe the first time. Let's get more people in space. Let's not in the millions, but maybe more in like the hundreds or thousands. Collect some more data. Come back. Develop some medication, some physical routine, something to keep them safe up there.
Yes.
And then in terms of getting that many people up there, it's not just us. We have China that's helping out. We have private companies that are now willing to invest, I'm sure, great sums of money to try to get something close to like a space hotel.
That's exactly right.
So that people can enjoy something like this. And what comes to mind for me at first is, well, if we're going to have a hotel up there, if we're going to have a space station up there, we're going to have a dock up there, making sure that everything's shipshape.
Yes.
Right. So,
exactly.
And just kind of as a point of clarification, of those 6 people that are on the ISS, are any of them trained as physicians?
Yes, so an excellent question. And so many wonderful ways that this can go. But let me begin with the ISS. So as I said, you're absolutely correct. It would be great to have a physician. Sometimes I believe there have been 1 or 2 physicians on board, but generally the policy is to have at least 1, and if not 2, people who are trained up to a certain level to be able to offer just basic medical care. So, they do have that in place. But when you think about, if you switch out of the International Space Station world and you go to the private space station world, where let's say we become space tourists and we are there for a little while, and what have you, you can imagine if something goes wrong, what will happen? There are no ambulances charging up to space, right? There's no CVS, there's no Walgreens. I mean, so I think private space station companies do have to think very carefully about how they want to, and I'm sure that they're attempting to do this already, how they want to integrate the medical safety of people that are actually going to be on those stations, whether they're for tourism or for research. Medical safety comes first. Safeguarding human health comes first. And as I said, I think that is something that we can all agree on. And you're absolutely correct also, Jake. It would be great to have millions of people living and working in space, but you have to take realistic steps forward. International Space Station, great deal of learning done. I believe the Tiangong, which is a Chinese station, I'm sure that they're also doing their own human medical safety and human space flight research. And then private companies also need to get into the business of understanding how this can be important. Now, the other thing I should just very quickly point out is that, whenever we think about medicine or space medicine, we're thinking people living on the moon, people living on ISS, private space stations. But a significant part of the ways that private commercial companies are already involved is by running experiments on the International Space Station. I did say it's a lab, right? So they're already running experiments, and some of those experiments are of particular interest to the space medicine field. So related to cancer research, related to osteoporosis, related to printing medication on demand, which could be also an extremely important way to think about how do you deal if you have to deliver emergency medical thing, because it's not that easy to transport everything into space. Some of that stuff you're going to have to learn to do in space for people in space. How do we do that?
Yeah.
How do we actually get there? So pharmaceutical companies are, Procter & Gamble, for example, Merck, for example, are already sort of involved in some of that research that is taking place. Yeah. Yes, exactly. So I think that that's another avenue for our young space physicians or medical professionals to sort of think about, because I think that that's another very critical piece before we send, armada of humans, human beings.
Yeah.
We
Because everything's going to be at risk.
Exactly. So, so I feel that we've done a lot of learning, still learning to be done, and it's a continuous learning process. It's not like we will just learn everything, that'll be it. I think it will go on. And the tools and the mechanisms that we put into place to do that learning, and how we sort of share that knowledge and build safety for human beings, I think that's the important task ahead.
And I completely agree. And the fact that medicine seems to be a subject that's ongoing, you'll pretty much never stop learning your entire. That's what we learn here.
Right. Exactly.
So once you apply medicine to law and space and all of this jazz, now we have another continuous stream of knowledge coming in. So everyone working, like all the future doctors and physicians that are going up in space, and even the lawyers are going to have a lot to learn about and keep learning about.
Exactly.
My one big question that comes up next for me is for space policy.
Yes.
I feel like there could be some hindrance in terms of reaching an end goal. Like you mentioned, everyone is going to care about the health of the people when they're going up there. I've heard of situations where some companies will cut corners when it comes to product or management of product that could come at the risk of the health of those of the people who take the product or use the product, whatever it may be. So is that where policy comes in? Are we using the federal or state laws to force that these companies make sure they attain a certain standard of health when it comes to space travel later on? What do you have any idea of what that would look like? Do you think there would be a risk?
So let me step back and tell you how this research actually takes place, how private companies, for example, and as well as educational institutions, universities are involved in the research on the space station, because that's the learning that we can take and apply to what we can expect. But first, let me just say that, private companies are private companies. They're doing this for profit. And so I think that is sort of baked into the system. But in 2005, the U.S. segment of the International Space Station was officially designated a national lab. And about 60% of that lab, maybe perhaps more, is given over to commercial providers who are doing research on that. So pharmaceutical companies are involved. They're doing whatever kind of research that they are doing. And that for that research to take place, it's supervised by national authorities. So the United States is responsible for authorizing, licensing those activities that then take place on the International Space Station. But the research is just one part of it, right? So I think as medical professionals, that you do the medical research, and then what happens is that to turn that into some sort of a commercial product, it's a slow burn, right? So you do have to go through that process. So where the governments are involved is sort of facilitating an environment in microgravity, which means basically weightlessness. in which you can do different kinds of experiments, perhaps compress the timelines under which you would do your experiments, bring that knowledge back down to Earth, and then think about ways to commercialize that for the benefit of people around us, and then potentially also for the benefit of people going to the space station or the moon or Mars or what have you. So I would say that as with any pharmaceutical company, the first step is how can we sort of commercialize that? So, as I said, the data are small. So you can do panel data. You can have 6 astronauts spread over several years. You can kind of get the panel data. You have some longitudinal variation. You can understand depending on what your experiment is. But I think that process is not going to be dissimilar to what we find for pharmaceutical companies around us here. If there is a commercial product to be made, then that commercial product will be, then they will be profiting from this. So I think the United States is also very interested in ensuring that it is commercially driven. So governments can only do so much. We want commercial innovation in these fields that's a benefit to humanity, and then the idea is that perhaps governments can procure some of those products, but then hopefully also the benefits can spread to humanity in general. So it just depends on what it is that we are, what the pharmaceutical companies are doing their research on.
Got it. So there will be kind of a dance between both the government, pharmaceutical companies, and the private companies that want to send, because it's still kind of early phase. The companies are thinking about doing something, but it's not like fully fleshed out. So what I expect there to be in my head is like a document, like many pages, saying here's the steps and processes we're going to take to get there. Here's the measures we're going to implement to make sure that everyone's getting proper treatment, proper care, because that's honestly what ends up being important to us docs. We want to make sure that everyone gets fair treatment.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. That's pretty cool. So we're definitely on the right track.
We're on the right track. Yes, absolutely.
And then to think kind of more forward then.
Yes.
Us because the majority of the audience here is going to be medical students, kind of like just like
Fantastic.
me. What is the message that you want to give them to well, what's the end goal that you want for us med students to know, essentially?
Well, I would love to see sort of physicians on every space station, physicians, a medical corps, space medical corps that is fully trained and is aware of the medical, health, and legal challenges that we face in sort of effecting a system that safeguards human health in space. We are not there yet, right? So you are doing all this learning in medical schools. We're teaching our students in law schools and policy schools. And I want these two sides to intersect and form a foundational body of knowledge that says, look here, this is where we are today. Our goal is millions of people living in space, but this is where we are today. This is the learning that needs to go into place so that we can then also have hundreds of thousands of space physicians and medical health professionals supporting, those millions of people living in space. Because I don't see how we can do that unless we grow that generation of space medical health, legal and policy professionals, simply because of the environment that we're in, simply because of the learning that has taken place, and simply because of where we are in international realities. So I think the United States and private corporations in the U.S., educational facilities in the U.S. can sort of help lead that conversation forward in collaboration with others within the United States, but also with partners abroad. So that's the message that I want to give the young space physicians and medical health people, is that we have caught you at the very early stages. So thank you so much for listening. But these are the steps that need to be effected so we can see a whole generation, a whole cadre of you actually supporting life in outer space, human health in outer space. You will be the first, you will be the first generation in a sense. It will be the first viewer. Yeah, exactly. So I think with that sort of vision in mind, it's easy to see why the medical field becomes extremely important. And I think the race is on for that. So who gets to be there first and lead that conversation becomes extremely important even among educational institutions.
So at least it's always good that we're doing this now then.
Oh my gosh, yes. As I said, California State, well done. I've done this for a long time. And I think this is the first time that I've had a medical, school sort of reach out and say, well, can we sort of have a conversation? So I think having done this for like 25, 30 years, I feel like, my gosh, this is a first. And I hope that this will be the first of many conversations where we're learning together as we move forward.
Honestly, I think it will be, because this is a topic that's pretty much at the forefront of a lot of, I'm sure, law and now possibly medical people's minds.
Right.
So the way that I see this kind of going on in the future, at least from our knowledge, is that after our first 4 years of medical school itself, we then go to a residency and we can pick what we want to do, whether it's practitioner, emergency, neurology, like cardiology, any of those things. And maybe we could potentially make a residency for space.
Yes.
Right. Focusing on the key aspects that tend to happen most in patients that are in space, being like supposedly osteoporosis, things like handling gravity, like the microgravity and the muscle weakness that comes with that. All that could be encompassed in some new residencies that end up getting made. But I feel like that's very, very far away from us, but like very solid end goal.
I think that's right. I think aerospace medicine, I believe that there are residencies for aerospace medicine per se. So that's both aviation and space together. I believe that's a field, aerospace medicine.
Oh, okay. Maybe.
So, but when you say a residency, I imagine, Jake, that maybe a young physician like yourself is on some space station, and that's your first residency, and you kind of think that.
That would be.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think, if things go as projected, we're talking about 20, 25 years. So you will still, there's still a chance for you.
Man. Yeah, we could always switch. It's not like whatever residency you choose, that's it. A lot of people switch. Well, there's two things I want to talk about now. Is what, because I mentioned you talking to us about this this collection, this work called the SDS. It was the Space Diplomacy Symposium.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much, Jake, for mentioning that. I think following what you were doing here at CNU, for a long time I felt that our communities are too siloed. So whether we're doing civilian space or commercial space or military space, they tend to be divided. And then discipline-wise, we're also divided: law, policy, medicine. And so the purpose of this symposium really is to sort of begin to break down those silos and to invite people to contribute their own specialties and their own knowledge to a general audience, and to raise awareness of how we can use collaboration to deal with real problems that are taking place in space. And one of those problems that's of interest to me is, especially in light of this interaction, is how do we affect the medical and health policy piece of it in a way that serves the interests not just of the United States, but our international partners and our young space physicians and medical professionals in training. So with an eye on that, we have this annual Space Diplomacy Symposium. We've been running it for about 3 years. It takes place every year. And then this year is the first time that I had also focused attention on biomedicine and biotechnology as a topic within that. So as I keep saying, we're at the beginning of conversations between these very siloed communities, just learning about who is doing what, how that is important, how we come together to actually solve concrete problems, and how we advance our own space medical core. On the private side or commercial side, I think it's an extremely important goal a worthy goal from my academic perspective, but also a very important goal for the United States.
And that actually brings up a really good point that I want to mention, in that I'm sure there's a lot of moments in history where when we put great minds together, like a lawyer and a group of lawyers can only get so far when it comes to a certain project or capability. But if you add in engineers, if you add in doctors, if you add in, all these different professions, if they're to all come together,
Yes.
the amount of knowledge that they have is so pretty much unlimited to that point where you can do anything, like creating a space station or a space hotel that can hold all these people. So I do think we are taking a step in that direction. The symposium that you have seems like a really, really, really good first step, because it seems like we already have some communication going on between the medicine and the law. So just for our purposes, for those medical students that may be interested in wanting to go to this symposium this year, when is it happening? Where is it happening? What do they expect to see when they go there?
Yes. So this will take place on the 7th of November, 2025. It will be in Seattle, and the program for that will go up very shortly, both at the University of Washington Law School and then also under the Strategy, Policy, and Diplomacy program at the Jackson School of International Studies. And there are two institutions that are, and of course, I would welcome the opportunity to have medical professionals and medical students in that audience as well. So if anyone is interested, please have them reach out to me directly at my University of Washington address, and it is open to everyone. And the idea is really to begin to harness the power of dialogue, to be aware of the problems, network with people who are sort of working in the same area, and sort of begin to grow from there. And I love the way, Jake, that you said, being only in an engineering or law or medical field, you can only go so far. But when you are together, it completely changes the conversation. And I completely agree with that. And in my own space law and policy class that I teach here at the University of Washington, I have students from aeronautics and astronautics, earth, space and sciences, law school, policy school, international studies, and it completely changes the dynamics in the class, because you can ask a professional, a rocket engineer in the class, does this even make sense from an engineering perspective?
Yeah.
It completely changes the conversation. I'm waiting for my first medical student to take that class. So
people, especially who are interested in law and medicine, could definitely see this as an opportunity to grow, because in the end, people want to end up doing something they enjoy, right? I'm sure that's why your father was a diplomat, and then you kind of got inspired by that lady who had taught you about the Japanese culture, international relations there. Like that, it gives us a little more meaning.
Yes, I think
when it comes to in terms of what our life looks like. So I think it would be best that we have people reach out to. And could you say your email kind of word for word?
Can. Of course. It's smp1@uw.edu.
Perfect. Okay. So for those who are interested, you can definitely reach out to her and see if you can go to this symposium. I feel like it would be a great opportunity. I did do a little more digging in that website that you sent me, and I found a tab that was a program called Strategy, Policy, and Diplomacy Research.
That's right.
Is that something that we could also get involved with? Is that around the SDS, or tell us?
It is. So we call that program, thank you so much for bringing that up, Jake. We call that program SPIDER for short. So Strategy, Policy, Diplomacy. So SPIDER. So SPIDER and the Space LDP program at the law school, so it's an interdisciplinary, right? So it is coming out of the law school and it's coming out of international studies. And then they help to effect and help us run the Space Diplomacy Symposium. And the objective of SPIDER is precisely to try to come up with solutions to a range of diplomatic issues that really do need countries to work together. So let me give you a very good example that also intersects with space and medicine and technology, which is the area that I sort of work in. So we've all heard of AI. And AI is already making significant inroads into medicine, I'm sure, as you know, but it's also making significant inroads into the space field. And it offers tremendous there are regulatory challenges that are there, but there are also some great innovations that can potentially happen to affect the kind of environment that we're interested in cultivating, right? And I think that AI can be a powerful tool in helping us amass that information. And one of the objectives of SPIDER is going to be to think about the intersection between space, AI, and medicine. And you can absolutely count on hearing back from me about how that is going to play out. Now, having said that, I would say the problem is once again what we've been talking about all along, which is that we're such siloed communities. I know the people who do AI policy, I know the people who are doing medicine, I know the people who are doing, but where are they meeting together? So I think we're looking for places where they can intersect. And here, I think I'll be looking for partners across the country that will be, I'm hoping that CNU might be one of those partners as we sort of move forward together to effect those kinds of collaborations. And to bring this back to the conversation about, well, how do you get space physicians onto a space station, so that you have, we can provide the medical or emergency care that's necessary if it becomes necessary. Well, you do that by stepping back and saying, what are the dots that need to go into place so that we can make sure that that young space physician is on the space station when he or she is needed. So that's the end goal. And so I think if we work on concrete problems, bring together technology, medicine, law, and policy, bring them together, sort of train you to be aware of those things, then the pathways to you in terms of your future look very different. Maybe your residency is on a space station. Who knows what that looks like? Maybe there is a floating general hospital in space. That's a different kind of residency that we are talking about. But I want SPIDER to play that role in sort of helping to effect those conversations, because it begins with putting different people with different competencies in the same room to work on a common problem. And the common problem that we face is, how do we help and assist and safeguard human health in space? And we're, I think, as I said, we have a long time to sort of put that into place. And we're at the beginning steps, but I think together we can sort of make a difference.
I definitely think so too. And I think that would be a really amazing goal to strive for. And the fact that you have the SDS and SPIDER working in your favor to kind of break down the silos between communication, I think it's one of the best steps we can take forward. So it seems like there's so many avenues we have to look at this at. There's the how do we bridge the communication? What does a space 101 for us docs look like?
Yes, a space medicine 101. A very important question that you asked, because we're doing this on the space law 101. What do our engineers sort of need to know? So I did give some time thinking about this, and I think there are three blocks that we sort of need to think about. The first block is sort of getting a curriculum in place. Now, I'm sure that in medical schools, you already have your curriculum. You need a certain basic knowledge that needs to go into place. And I think that there's probably there's probably some required and elective measures that go into place that give you the building blocks of a space medicine field. But what I would also say is that knowing the people who can do that sort of training around the country, there's not that many people around.
No, definitely not.
So there's not that. So
not yet.
Not yet, right? So we want to definitely have this be part of the curriculum. That's step one. That's sort of where we start. That's what educators do. You sort of put together a curriculum, you assess what's there, you sort of bring it together. You say, this is what a young physician needs to know. But what I would also say is that we can do this on concentrated and compressed timelines using summer boot camps. So imagine in your head a summer boot camp that brings together the foundational elements of space medicine, space health policy, space law, and space policy. And within about, let's say, 2-3 weeks, it kind of gives you that basic knowledge. And then in the final week, just kind of build that foundational knowledge. And then in the final week, it says, okay, now we're going to run you through what we call tabletop exercises or crisis simulations. And so supposing, Jake, you are that young physician on the space station, and we say to you, we've given you all this knowledge, we've given you all this learning, you now know the pieces in place. Tell us what you would do and how you would behave if something like an epidemic broke out on the space station. Like, what is it that you would do? What would you do if a space tourist had a heart attack on the and this is not, I mean, these are, I'm sure that you do this all the time in your medical field, but the policies that have gone into place so far are, we of course have a good understanding at the national level, but as I keep saying, we're not in a national environment anymore. This is cross-national international. We all need to be on the same page with respect to these kinds of things. So you can imagine there might be a person from Singapore who is on an American space station being treated, I don't know, by a doctor from Zambia, for example.
Yeah.
Right? Space physician from Zambia. And so, all those nationals come from different jurisdictions. They all have different passports. So what's governing? How would you react? What are the protocols in place? What are the best practices in place? What are the medical procedures in place? We don't have those templates. We don't. So the first step to do is to train people like yourself. So look, here's the foundational building blocks. This is what you need to know. This is what we know at this point. It give you the state of the art knowledge, bring you rapidly up to speed, then put you through these, what we call TTX, tabletop exercises. So we design a simulation. We'll say, okay, give us a solution. And the way we stress test your knowledge and also learn ourselves as educators is by finding what works and what doesn't work. What are the pieces that are missing? What do we need to be able to do if our goal for all of us working on this is to safeguard human health? How do we respond in emergencies? How do we respond in day-to-day practice? We don't know any of those things. So right now it's hypothetical, and that's why it's important to have those table TTX exercises, because it really trains your mind to anticipate crisis scenarios that can, how would you do this? Could you do surgery in space? Well, what do you need to know, doctor, in order to be able to do those surgeries?
In microgravity? Sounds impossible.
Exactly. And I don't even know how the surgery, would you have to be standing up because the blood is already rushing to your head,
Yeah, so those next couple of months are going to be cool.
So I think maybe a TTX to think about is, well, how would you perform surgery? I mean, like just even thinking about that problem, you would say, oh my God, it's a totally different environment than the way that you might have a thing. So those were the first two pieces that sort of thinking about. So it's a curriculum, sort of a boot camp with an experiential TTX. And then I think also implementation. How do we implement this in a way so that young physicians like yourself or medical professionals like yourself, or even healthcare professionals, how do they see a pathway forward into those jobs, into those fields?
Right. Yeah.
And I think I from my understanding at this stage, and of course, hopefully, the door opens even wider. There are two steps that are involved. One step is that you connect to national and international authorities that are responsible for sending their people or that are being part of the either part of the medical core professional or the tourist, professional, or tourist or other working professional. So that's one thing. But the other piece that I think can also be extremely powerful in a way, and I think is significant, especially in an era where there's a lot of emphasis in the commercial innovations, is to reach out directly to the commercial companies themselves and say, so let's say Blue Origin or SpaceX or Axiom, so the big players in space that are interested in space stations and interested in getting humans out into space, have the space physicians also become part of their core. So you see a pathway forward as medical professionals seeping also into our private, commercial, innovation field, delivering healthcare, delivering medical care. I think that is also a very important pathway forward. And I think we will go from there. So I think that's the role that universities or educational institutes can begin to build the foundations for leading our space medical core forward. And right now it's been, as I said, very siloed, national, civilian, commercial. It's not going to cut it as we move forward. And so, I think it's prime time for thinking about medicine, health, and international space law. The time is now.
It really is. And it's going to be starting now. And it doesn't seem like much, but I bet you 20, 30 years down the line, there's going to be even more conversation happening both at the SDS and the Spire to kind of facilitate this idea. So just to make sure I have this concept summed up, it looks like to me there's going to be kind of a 4-stage process when it comes to going from education to implementation.
Yes.
Right? The first is going to be training. We're going to need to first teach them the curriculum, for sure. And I'm sure it will coincide slightly with what we already learn in medical school. The first 2 years are very kind of textbook heavy. So I can definitely imagine people doing boot camps over the summers being like, oh, hey, if you're interested in space, come learn what you've already learned, but in a more space-oriented aspect. And then obviously this curriculum is going to come from data and then develop the curriculum. From there, like third, fourth years, that's when we're kind of on rotation and doing things more physical. And that would be our chance to say, hey, if you have a little bit of time, let's do this. You mentioned TXX, tabletop TTX, tabletop kind of experiential, like do it DIY situation. That would be a great opportunity to put those into. And then the third being now implementation of further training in terms of like residencies. And that can even kind of combo in with the fourth idea of having there be an actual job. Maybe the companies themselves can make residencies that we can train at, further train at, to then get to space and practice in space.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
When you were talking this past like little bout, you mentioned a Zambian doctor looking over at like a Japanese, let's say, civilian under a company that's run by the US, right?
Yes.
What's very interesting about that is that, believe it or not, but a lot of countries handle situations in different ways.
Yes.
Right? I don't know the exact details. Granted, I'm still young, but I do know that certain countries prefer certain medications in certain situations. So I think even before all of this, all the countries that want to be in this medical space hotel idea, like conglomeration, need to come with we have a standard unit of measurement, right? There's the centimeter or the inch, right?
Yes.
We need to come up with a standard unit of drug management and patient interaction. You know what I mean? We need to have, because then it becomes unfair, right?
Yeah.
We have a person from Zambia who gets sick and a Japanese person is taking care of them. The Japanese learned a certain way and the Zambians learned a different way. So an argument will happen and there'll be some huge explosion of not physical explosion, but like a huge kind of conversational explosion of like, no, I need to be taking this drug, not this drug. Or no, you need to be doing this procedure, not this procedure.
Yeah.
So I think it dives even more into the weeds of what it really means to start a conversation like this. So I want to add on saying that not only should this symposium that you're having be among professions, it should also be among countries.
That is absolutely correct. I mean, and we would love to have participation from outside the United States as part of this conversation as we begin to build it out. And I can imagine in the SDS going forward, I love the way that you said the standard unit of care or the standard unit of space. That is just a brilliant idea. I love it. I think it's so useful. Something concrete to work towards. That's the kind of idea that we could both bring up as a conversation, but then also develop a TTX around and see what might happen if exactly in this scenario, what are your rights and obligations as a doctor? Here, I think we have some learning that we could do from this 1998 intergovernmental agreement. There are 5 countries that are responsible, 5 actors that are responsible for running the space station together. And one of the ways that they think about damages is, also talking about impairment to health. And so we've also learned about how different countries, so if of those 6 astronauts, maybe 2 are from Russia and one of what is from, the United States. And only 2, let's say 2 of those people are both of them from the United States. How does your standard unit of care work then? I mean, it's easy to say, we've trained them up to, whatever the emergency medical protocols might be, but you're having a very different that's 6 people. Now you're talking about hundreds of people. You're absolutely, so kudos to you, Jake. I think that that's a wonderful idea. And that's something that we need to really think about and can use the learning, again, from the International Space Station to sort of help us evolve our understanding on this very important and practical application of what it means to give care in this kind of setting. We don't know is the answer at this point, but it's something we can build and learn together.
And I think it is a good starting point. But now that I'm kind of thinking about it more, there's a bit of a different avenue and also a bigger question for you as a like trained policy kind of even experienced international relation and all that jazz. Um, what if because you mentioned it's a space race.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yes.
not a space collaboration.
Yes.
The way that it's, you know what I mean? The connotation that the word space race
Mm-hmm.
puts is that it's country versus country,
Yes.
which
Mm-hmm.
seems a little at odds because you mentioned, I remember you mentioning the 1967, that treaty where countries were working together,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and so my big question to you is, does this reality exist? Will we see what are we more likely to see, do you think? Are we more likely to see every country against each other, each with their own different standard
Mm-hmm.
unit of healthcare?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you more likely to see a kind of, going based off that treaty from 1967, a conglomeration of all the community of all the countries, an understanding of a general method of practice that we can then implement? What is more likely, do you think, in your
Yes.
political
In my
knowledge?
political. So, so now let me come to the political side of the story. We are at a very interesting moment in this. Many people call it the new space race. Some people think of it as this new space age. But there is definitely a competition that's taking place. The competition is between sort of a US-led side and then also a China-led side. So
Those are the
when
two
I
things.
say, those are the two kind of big. Those are the two dominant, uh, unquestionably the two top players in the space field. Both of them have their own space stations. Both of them have ambitions to settle outposts on the moon and Mars and whatnot. Nobody's even close to the United States and China. So they are peer competitors. There's no question that is.
Okay, they're not working together.
They are not working together
Okay.
at the moment. So I think though that having said that, what I also say is that I am sure that China is as interested in taking care of its human astronauts as the U.S. is in taking care of its space flight corps, as well as any commercial passengers that might come aboard. And so when we think about possible areas where they might come together and begin to at least have a dialogue, space medicine might be one of those, right? The fruits of space research is a separate matter, but safeguarding of human health, I think that is something that at a minimum, countries and can agree. So the first very important rule about diplomacy is that we don't go after the biggest problem. We start with the low-hanging fruit. We say human life is important. Everybody respects human life. Impairment to health is a danger for all space exploration activities. Yeah. So can we begin to have a conversation there? I feel that is a productive path forward for thinking about bringing countries together to at least initiate a conversation and some basic understanding that should affect the way that we give care or take care of human beings in space. And I do not say that diplomacy is always leads to a peaceful. Yeah, it does not always. We know that is a reality. But having said that, we also must retain some hope for diplomacy in sort of effecting some collaboration in the context of the Outerspace Treaty. So both the United States and China are signatories to the Outerspace Treaty, as is Russia. And the dominant players are all part of that. And this is a low-hanging fruit to come together around to build collaboration regarding the safety of human beings and health in space. So we start there and let us see where that goes. But that's the context that we're in. There is a competition, but here's a possible productive pathway forward to think about effecting collaboration, even between countries that don't necessarily see eye to eye with each other.
I think from an optimistic standpoint, and obviously I know nothing of law or policy or what's been going on in terms of international relations over the past 50 some years, right? I don't know much about that, but the way I envision a best case scenario is that we do pick that low hanging fruit first, and then we do begin to have conversations where, like, maybe the United States does this form of medicine right, and then China does this form of medicine right when it comes to this specific aspect. So like combining all the different
Yes.
do's and don'ts from
Yes.
each country could end up forming this super meta, the super system of healthcare that pretty much is the best for every possible situation, right? Because countries can only be so good at doing everything, right? There's limits to access to medicine. There's limits to proper training, things like that. So in an ideal situation where we have the best outcome is each of the countries that are interested, most likely US and China, maybe a couple of other players that want to have private companies, so other countries that have private companies, would combine their knowledge together within the medical field to develop a beautiful healthcare system. And then from there, kind of establish a load of peace in terms of, because everything is war ridden right now. And it's always.
Yes.
But that kind of conversation, like maybe we could use space as an avenue to bring peace to all. Like that's my crazy, like super positive aspect, in that if you guys can agree in this one low hanging fruit, we can work our way up to pick higher fruit.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
I think that's exactly right. Start with something, a principle that we all say we need to safeguard human health in space. We need to safeguard our astronauts. We need to safeguard our space tourists. We need to safeguard even our physicians themselves. Yeah, it's all about the safety of human beings. And I like the way that you said, I can imagine a panel in which they say, this is the learning we have done. US comes and says, this is learning we have done. China comes and says, this is the learning we have done. Other countries sit on the panel. We all learn, we write that down, and we sort of build that as a foundation, have a template for what might come out of that as a manual for medical caregiving in space. So I think that's even with the very challenging international environment that we are in, I think that's a possibility where diplomacy can play an important role in keeping the channels open and keeping dialogue going on effecting a peaceful exploration of outer space, which is the worthy goal of the Outer Space Treaty.
It really is. It really is. And I think with this conversation alone, we can kind of start to open up more the doors, right? So as just a kind of general call out to the audience, email Dr. Pekkanen for sure.
Oh, yeah.
See what the SDS looks like, what Spider looks like. Get involved.
Yeah.
These are the opportunities that we are handing to you, and it's whether or not you want to seize them is really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And before we finally end by wrap up the podcast, is there anything else that you want to say to us medical students, or just kind of the world in general, in terms of anything?
Yes. Well, first of all, let me thank you, California North State University, for giving me this opportunity to sort of educate myself also really about space medicine. So I really appreciate that. And to all the young physicians and young healthcare professionals and medical professionals, I want to say, come join the space race. Come join the space race.
I like that. That's a good one. Come join the space.
Yes. Help us make it more peaceful and useful for all of humanity.
And I think there will be a fair number of people that would be interested. And as the word gets out, there's going to be more people, because I've always loved space back when I was a kid.
Lovely.
So it's like it'll hit a nostalgic bell for me. That's really nice. Well, again, Dr. Pekkanen, thank you so much for coming on. It was an absolute pleasure getting to talk to you over these past couple of weeks and today.
Yeah.
We've worked extremely hard to get something like this going, and I'm very happy that we did make this make this podcast a reality, because this is a step towards a really interesting future, no matter which angle it takes. But I definitely expect to see some major changes after I'm done with my career in residency. I definitely expect to see space residencies or space bootcamp.
Jay, thank you so much for spending your time with me and also helping to educate me. It's a pleasure to talk to you. And I really hope to see you on some space station someday. Really cute.
Expect it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.